For Eric Goldman, Executive Editor of IGN.com.
Hi there, guys. Let me bring out some folks who make that little show we just watched some clips from. We'll start off with the executive producer and writer, Rockne S. She plays Rachel Matheson. Please welcome Elizabeth Mitchell. Rachel's dear daddy, they get along so well all the time, as Dr. Gene Porter, Stephen Collins. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Let me start out with you, Rockne. You joined the show this season. A lot changed, story-wise, environment-wise. When you went into season 2, did you just say, let's really sort of, not, no pun intended, flip the switch on this whole thing and really change everything plans?
Yeah, I mean, for me, what was great was I literally was a fan of the show the first season. I was working on something else of my own, and it was the one network show that I watched and I just really liked it. So when I went in and met with Eric and he told me what he had in mind and kind of, where it was shaking out, I just got wildly excited because it was like the ultimate fan experience of being a fan of the show who gets to go on and actually write and work on the show. Yeah, I mean, I think the show in this second season is really, the mojo's really working, and kind of look at it as though these first 2 seasons are kind of the first chapter of the kind of bigger, kind of mythic Revolution saga. And so, yeah, I mean, as you see kind of from the preview, there's everything kind of comes together in terms of the Patriot story and the Nano story. They kind of weave in these last four episodes upcoming, and then it just totally wildly spins us off into these wildly different stuff. As you noticed, you might have noticed a tease that was on. There were some lights.
Elizabeth, for you, because you were on the first year of the show, you have the established sort of dynamic. Most TV shows don't shake things up that dramatically, maybe a few years in. So was it, exciting for you? Was it surprising for you when they decided to really switch things up season 2?
Well, I mean, I feel like Revolution's done that from the beginning. I mean, they answered all their questions in like the first of the season. They're like, oh no, there's more. So I wasn't necessarily, I'm really loud. Sorry. I wasn't necessarily surprised. A lot of the people were really happy. It was really fun. I mean, it's always fun when it's fun, and when I get kind of excited about what's next, that's nice.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, Stephen, you joined the show this season. There was some pretty notable reveal about your character a few episodes in. What were you initially told about Gene? Did you know that was coming?
I did not know that was coming. In fact, one of the things about doing this show is all of us, we get the scripts often just the episode before. We're in the middle of the episode before, and suddenly the new script comes in, and we're all madly reading it to find out what happens next. I certainly didn't know, and I'm glad I didn't know, actually, in the first few episodes that Gene had been working for the Patriots. I probably would have played it in some way. And what fascinated me about it was that when it was revealed, the first thing you think is, oh my God, I should have played the whole first 3 episodes differently. But then I realized that if Gene was as good a liar as he would have to be, he would have played it exactly the way. The writers had actually tracked it backwards beautifully. So I didn't have to say, oh no, I should have played that scene differently.
Right. Really, for all 3 of you, can you talk about the relationship between Rachel and Gene these days? There was some obvious issues to work through.
She tried to kill me. She almost put a bomb down the chimney that would have killed me.
The best thing was the next episode. We were talking, remember? We were talking before scene, and he goes, I watched that episode. You actually tried to kill me. Like, you hadn't really thought it through at that time.
Well, it's one thing to read it in the script, and then it's another thing to see Liz playing the scene where she's got the bomb in her hand and she's about to put it down the chimney, and she really wants to put it down. That was very different. I hadn't seen the complete coldness in your eyes that was like, yes, I will kill my father now because that's what I have to do.
Oh, dead eye. Poor hot dad.
Rockne, are you throwing any more curveballs at these two the relation?
Always. I mean, all of our characters are trying to hold on to a kernel of family and connection and all that under incredibly arduous circumstances. And the things that Rachel discovered about her father, especially at the heat of the moment where we revealed it, just put her in a place. And
She was mad.
Yeah.
She was really having a good match. She had a mad on her.
Right.
So she decided to kill her father and everyone else. What did it do?
It happened.
It happens.
Put a screwdriver in your hand and, right?
What is that?
One thing I've really liked in season 2 is there is an increased sense of humor to the show.
Oh, so
And there's
fun.
a place for some witty stuff, some pop culture references. With you guys, sitting in the writer's room, is that something where you just kind of figure out the places where that works and how it might filter in?
Well, that's one of the things that obviously Eric's other show, Supernatural, had that in spades. My show, Farscape, had a lot of that as well. And it's natural in the writer's room, just as you're talking to other fans and slash writers, to just throw those references back and forth, and it just becomes kind of natural and organic and satisfying to throw as many of them into the script as you can as well. It makes for a wonderful immediate identification for the viewers with the characters as well. It's probably a lot of those references are probably cooking in their own heads.
Well, yeah, I assume in a world with no new movies and TV shows, you would constantly reference them.
Well, it lets the show breathe too, and the revolution is so life and death every moment, really, of every day that these characters live through. At any time, for a moment, you can see someone remember to have a sense of humor. It's not only sort of grace under pressure, which is the real definition of courage, but I know because I watch the show as someone who's in it, but I also watch the show as an audience, because I can't wait to see how scenes come out. And when, every time Billy Burke says, "What a dick," it makes me happy because he finds 8,000 different ways to spin that same line. And I think I think the show can use every bit of humor that you guys choose to put in. It's tricky though, because some situations are too tense for humor.
Is there a favorite Rockne that you got in this season as far as one of those pop culture references?
Not so much pop culture per se, but the one I think was in the reel we just saw. We were very aware of in the room that our characters were often usually, certainly Miles was among them, was part of up looking at the Patriot camp from the exact same place and looking down the camp and observing it. And so Eric came up with the line for Miles. I just feel like I'm always laying in the same spot with rocks in my junk, and it was a reaction to our own awareness that we're just always in that spot.
Right.
To me, that's kind of that self-awareness and story that is legitimate, and to the character. To me, just like that's when those two things mesh. It's perfect.
You guys have any that jump to mind, whether your own or someone else's? The favorite line got thrown in?
You mean that might have been ad-libbed?
Not ad-lib necessarily, but one of
Because
the...
there's very, very little ad-libbing on the show. But I will tell you one ad-lib story because it made it in. And it was in a recent episode, it was revealed that I had this relationship with this woman in town who was the bartender. And when it was revealed, I was down in the basement with Miles, and the scripted line was, he said, I said, we were together for how many years? And Billy went, together? Like, actually together? And he said, oh great, now I have that in my head. That was the scripted line. But he found the actress Reiko so attractive that he said, together? Like, actually together? And then he waited and he said, good for you, Gene. And they kept that in, which I thought was great.
Oh, Reiko's hot. I think there were all kinds of lines about her being like an old bag and this, and all the actors are like, I can't say that. She's just too hot. I can't say that.
Well, I have to commend two things that really jumped to mind for myself this season. I have to commend is the David Schwimmer bit and the reference to the Baldwin Brothers Battle Royale or something that happened.
Those are all Eric favorites.
That's a great. You just kind of referenced this, Stephen, but we're getting some pieces of Gene's past. Is that fun for you? Is it kind of interesting for you to get these little slivers now? Because both you, but also the characters on the show, really, Rachel was so separated from him for so long to find out what he was up to.
It's a fascinating way of putting a character together because most of us, I know before I play a part, I build a backstory for the character out of my own imagination that is hopefully consistent with what I'm seeing in the script. But then, inevitably, the writers throw you information that you never saw coming. So obviously, when the season began, I did not know that my wife and Rachel's mother had died in a cholera epidemic.
Right.
I had invented something quite different, but it's one of the things about doing a show like this is that important bits of your character are provided almost like a jigsaw puzzle out of order. And if you're lucky, none of them is wildly at odds with what you've been putting out. And I was amazed this year every time the writers would throw something new into the backstory, it just helped. It never made me think, oh no, I have to read it.
Yeah. And as you might suspect, some big things we know, for example, we did know that Gene had conspired with the Patriots. Our original plan was somewhat different than what we kind of ended up with, but it was always going to be a kind of big reveal that Gene had been, a conspirator and kept a secret. That we knew, but there's, for example, the wife and things. There's so many things where in the room someone comes up with something that surprises us, and that's what's wildly exciting. So, it's not our mission to conceal things from you.
One of the things that the writers on Revolution do over and over again is
Justify my bad acting?
never has a false moment. No, they give all of the characters on the show. I say, this isn't a show where you get a choice between a really good choice and a really bad choice. You get a choice between a really horrible choice and a much worse than horrible.
The Sophie's choice.
The Sophie's
the
choice
Revolution
over and over.
Sophie's choice,
Yeah.
again and again and again.
So Gene's thing about being a patriot, I mean, what helped was that if he hadn't gone along with them, more people in his town would have been killed.
Sure.
And then when Rachel and Charlie came back to town, if he hadn't gone along with them, they would have been killed. So that's how she doesn't believe she would have been killed.
I always look at Gene as someone whose heart's in the right place, but his mind is telling him, and justifies the mean sort of thing. And in the last 4 episodes upcoming, that's throwing, it's a big pie right in your face.
Yeah.
We had a pretty big notable death just occur on the show. Poor Jason, yeah.
Right?
Can you talk, Rockne, how did you come to that storyline, and what can you say about what will happen in the aftermath? I'm thinking his dad might not take it so hot.
Yeah, that's a good suspicion on your part. No, it's very important, I think, for any show, and we see that a lot on television now, that any character is vulnerable, and it really makes the stakes of the show very, very real. And obviously, losing a character as important as Jason is a very, very, very difficult decision. But it had such an emotional resonance going back literally to the pilot that it was the right turn for the series at that time. And it so explodes so many things for Charlie in particular. Spins her, as you'll see in the first episode of the last 4, spins her in a very unusual way. Not at all what you'd expect her reaction to be coming off of this. And then, yes, Tom Neville, obviously, I always picture Tom as someone who felt, I'll hug Jason later. I can just, pound him and pound him and pound him. And someday, when there's time, I will hug him. And now that's been wrenched from him. He also lost Julia this year too.
Right.
So he's quite the definition of loose cannon.
Rachel and Charlie have had their own ups and downs. Can you talk about, with what's going on now with Charlie, a huge thing has just happened for her.
Yes.
Is Rachel able to be there for her? Is that something maybe Charlie doesn't want right now?
Someone asked me that earlier. I thought it was really great. And I was saying that I don't feel like Rachel's the person you go to with your troubles. You're like, I just had a really bad day. And she's like, really? But I think that Rachel's trying. I do. I think that she has in the past few episodes before the ones we're seeing now laid down somewhat of a moral hope in what we could be, and I think that along those lines she's trying in a very rusty way to be a good mother, to be a good support. So I think that she'll try. We'll see if Charlie takes her up on it.
You mentioned earlier, Rockne, that you've had some sort of split off storylines this season. Aaron especially has kind of been off for a while. He's now returned. How will that sort of, because you guys really don't know what's been going on with Aaron. Can you talk about what you'll discover and sort of how he will be integrated back into the group?
Yeah, if you look at the show as a kind of epic saga, or almost a novel, then we felt very comfortable this season. Having some threads go off. Obviously, Nano's essentially separate from the Patriot story for most of the season. Tom Neville had his own adventure, and now it all kind of will start these last 4 episodes, which we consider kind of its own kind of 4-hour event. They really are very tied together. Ties them all together, and the Nano it becomes very much a huge factor in those last bits. For me, Rachel is kind of the lightning rod, just feeding both stories, and both of those come together for her. So she's really talking about having stakes in both of the very strong storylines for the season. In these last episodes, and particularly the last episode of the season, it just whip her kind of back and forth.
Yeah, I definitely get like back and forth.
I was going to ask you both, about sort of Rachel and Jean's roles in these last 4 episodes.
Really? I have been enjoying the Nano part of things. I missed Zach and Aaron. I miss it when we're all apart, but then I also love it because I feel like it gives us reason to come back together. So when we started off on our little last 4 episodes, Nano-ish type things, I kind of described it like I walked down a long road and I knocked on a door, and that's where all maybe. Anyway, so that's where it all just goes completely nuts, and I enjoy. You guys know I enjoy nuts. So we had a really good time with that, and marrying the two was nice. It was fun to be the person who got to be both in the world battling the Patriots and also in Aaron's world, because I enjoyed that tremendously. I think he's absolutely hilarious, and I find it fun to see what everyone's going to do next. But yeah, I get beat up quite a bit. Both worlds.
You get to do any beating up?
I smack Priscilla around a little. but that was, it's fun. She was really
sweet. What role Jean will play in these last 4?
What I loved about what Jean's up to in the last few episodes is that it sort of reflected the journey we all take in making a full season of this show, which is that it's a very tough show to make, and it's very tiring from day to day, and it asks a lot of the actors, which I love. And so there's a kind of fatigue in us that is reflected in the characters back and forth, back and forth. I mean, doing the show is a little bit like being in that world.
Do you remember you came in to our hair and makeup wardrobe and you're like, I couldn't sleep last night, and you go, but it's Revolution, doesn't matter.
It's true. I mean, one of the great, I always say this, it's so wonderful when we're out in 104-degree weather that we're not wearing white linen suits all looking like we have to be fresh at a summer party.
Yeah.
We can look as beat up as we feel, which is great.
It is.
But I like that Jean is actually, like a lot of the characters in different ways, trying to figure out how to survive another day. How do you pick up and wake up in the morning in this world? What gets you through? And I love that the writers are kind of pushing each of the characters to look at that and to kind of re-up their faith, because I would think that just surviving in this world from day to day takes an implicit faith, not a gooey, easy, misty faith, but some deep-seated belief that it is worth surviving. And they all have that in different ways, and I got to play a scene with Liz in the last episode where she kind of is helping Jean get through the day, and it was it's exciting to get to do that stuff. It's very deep and sort of very elemental.
It's fun to do that stuff with you. That was a great scene. I can't wait for you guys to see it. You were awesome. I just got to sit and watch. That's my favorite thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, sitting and watching.
In a couple minutes, we'll start taking audience questions. I believe there are mics out there somewhere. We can't quite see if we're on stage.
Or you can jump up and down.
So if you have questions, find those mystery mics. They're out there. There's one over there. I want to ask about, there was a great episode this season that was sort of the clips of it, the Aaron Matrix episode. I don't think you can be in that. But Aaron didn't really know you.
Still a great episode.
Yeah. And how fun was that for you to play and also for you guys to write? Because there was a lot of self-deprecating, jokes in that.
I have too much to say.
Okay, no, I want you to
It'll be good. Okay, no.
It was an idea when we first gathered the writers' room at the beginning of the season. Obviously, lots of ideas for specific episodes came up, and I believe I'm almost certain it was Eric's idea to do that episode. And it was just a matter of when we fit it into the arc of the season, and we needed the time to set everything up so that it fit organically. And it wasn't a usual episode because it did key so much on one character, which our show doesn't normally, and then we found ways to integrate all the other characters in a really kind of fun, organic way. And it was just a gas. And it was so bizarre to watch dailies because you're watching the dailies, eat lunch, whatever, and then suddenly it's like, wait, there's a coffee maker going, and and all that, and to get to see you all, with the grime removed,
I came in the day after it aired and I looked at Liz and went, wow, you're really very attractive. Because she doesn't look like this on the set most of the time, as you can imagine.
I think revolution is a deconstruction. You get in the morning and they try to make you look worse. It's awesome.
The last part of our makeup process is literally...
Not kidding.
It's literally something called a dirt bag. It's a bag with dirt in it, and you put it on your face.
And then she'll look at you and she'll be like, your skin looks too smooth. And you're like, oh, thank you. And she's like, splat, splat, splat. And you're like, okay, awesome. I'll avoid you next time.
You've done a few flashbacks on the show, but was it different to not just what you were looking like, but just the way you were...
I just had fun watching everybody. First of all, Zach was spectacular because he's genuinely funny, but he's also such a beautiful, dramatic actor. He's fun to watch and we believe him, and he's kind of, in my way, our witness. He's our evidence. And then Miles as a drunk and his little asides and the way that he did it, I was laughing so hard most of the time. That little odd look on my face is me trying not to go. And then I think that he really just absolutely thrilled me was David, because it came in, hi guys. Just like look on his face. But I had such a great time with everybody. It was fun to be dressed up, but more than that, it was kind of fun to play a intelligent and slightly helpless yet oddly, it was just a fun character. She was new. It was like doing a hiatus movie. It was really nice. I had a great time. I did. I enjoyed every minute of it.
I have to ask, it does kind of fit into the whole pop culture thing we were talking about earlier, but it's also kind of this weird growing subplot of the show, which is how much we learn about California, the people living there, and Governor Affleck.
California was as we were breaking the latter part of the season, we knew we wanted to start to integrate a California storyline, and we really wrestled with introducing it and giving a face to it and all that in the season. And there's such rich stuff coming for California that we didn't want to. And there was so much we wanted to do in terms of getting the Patriot story to really kind of kick into high gear that we didn't want to give it short shrift. So we were very comfortable, like letting the California side of it, holding it at arm's length. But no, we're desperate to get there. And
There's little bitty hints here and there, though, in the next 4 episodes.
Yeah.
Like there's teeny tiny little asides that I think if you've been kind of like looking for them, you'll see. I think there's one in particular that I'm thinking of, but I can't tease it too much. There's one.
I'm just saying that, you know, your executive producer, J.J. Abrams, might know Jennifer Garner. And,
that might be a wish of ours.
I'd endorse that. Okay, so in the mystery darkness out there, do we have any audience questions? I think I saw